All righty. Thank you everyone for being here. We are so excited for this webinar. We want to give a special thank you to our affiliate network for participating in the communication survey, and the data that we use and is presented here is from that. So a really special thank you to our affiliates. This presentation should be around 45 minutes of your time, and then we will leave a little bit of time for questions and discussion. And so for our learning objectives, we just have a few here. We want to explore the data from the communication survey that was given to 29 of our affiliates. We want to inform and educate on the ways that FASD communications specifically are disseminated and understood. We want to explore successful communication strategies specific to FASD. And we want to expand upon what a new era of FASD communications means and what you or your organization can take away from this webinar. But before we jump into it, I want to go ahead and give our team a chance to introduce themselves.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cassidy. Hi, everyone. My name is Sophie Cece. I am the new media director here for FASD United. To know a little bit more about me, I have a background in creative directing and recently graduated with a master's in international human rights law from the Central European University in Vienna, Austria. So I bring a little bit of international spice to our media and comms team, and I'm in charge of all of our social medias, and I can't wait to tell you more about them. Thank you all for having me.
All right. Thanks, Sophie. So I'm Andy Catcher, Communications Director at FASD United. I've been with the organization since 2010 and have a background in nonprofit communications. And so I produce our weekly roundup email newsletter and develop our overall communication strategy and coordinate responses to news that comes up. So, for example, things like press releases and statements, and maintaining our archive of communications materials, and then work with the rest of the team on video content, including our glimpses of FASD series on the living experience, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Thank you.
And I'm Cassidy Gonzalez. I'm our current director of special projects. I am currently part-time as I complete my master's at Clemson University in health psychology. I'm studying sleep health, nightmare distress, and courage from a strengths-based lens. And I also have 3 adopted siblings, one of which has been diagnosed with FASD. So I bring that living experience perspective as well. So yeah, now that you've met us, let's go ahead and dive into the data. So FASD United surveyed our affiliate partners, 29 of whom responded about their knowledge of prenatal alcohol exposure, FASD, select alcohol terms, and available resources. The online survey also collected information about certain strategies and channels that the partners use to disseminate information to members and the community. And as you can see here from this bar graph, the #1 utilized category is living experience, which is very great news. Living experience is an expansive topic because you might see here that there's a category for individuals with FASD. And obviously, that is just for people living with the FASD diagnosis, whereas living experience encompasses people with FASD, caregivers, adoptive, kinship, family, birth parents, siblings, people with substance use disorders, and members that are directly tied into the community. And 97% of our affiliates are utilizing these sorts of sources, and this is really great. We know that FASD is a grassroots movement. It's influenced and supported by the people on the ground and word of mouth. And surprisingly, you'll see that internet was actually ranked 4th despite this. And we have listed here the top 4 internet sources that were used. So we have 93% using .gov sources. So this includes NIAAA resources, CDC materials, and other important verified government agencies. So our community is really good at utilizing validated sources for their communications, which we deserve a round of applause for that there. Often .com sources, as we know, may have misinformation, typos, or even falsities that we just want to avoid when we're discussing FASD and PAE. So it's really great to see that this slide that we have living experiences number 1 and .gov and .org sources coming in as number 1 and number 2. So moving forward on what kinds of information are being distributed on FASD, we have number 1, resources for individuals with FASD and their families and caregivers. So sticking with that living experience lens, moving down, we have FASD 101 information, which includes prevention and sort of that support lens. We also have prevalence statistics like the 1 in 20, important statistic that came out that has really been impactful in research in our community. And then living experience stories, which are hearing from people with a disability, as well as those that are birth mothers or involved directly. The last or the least amount of resources that we see here, or that we don't see here, is resources for pregnant people. So this should be a target area that we really focus on. This was the least utilized kind of information. And so this needs to really be a target area as we move forward, because as we know, prevention is very important to this movement. And we really want to make people that are pregnant feel supported and non-stigmatized. So how are these things being distributed? Number 1 is trainings, webinars, presentations. These are in person and virtual, just like this one. People's websites, which we will get into in a future slide, but websites are very heavily utilized for spreading information. And then social media, as we know, this just continues to become a larger and larger presence as we continue to spread information on different channels that we will get into after the data. So based on what assistance organizations would like with FASD dissemination, we saw things like social media templates, presentations. Number 1 was fact sheets, and that was actually 100% of responses. And FASD United has been really intentional this year and into, or last year, I guess now, and into this year about having those fact sheets that can be printable. And the most prominent category for what type of assistance was being looked for was research findings and state-specific information. And NIAAA and CDC have a lot of really great research findings. Those are continually coming out. And then state-specific information, I'll get into in the next slide, but FASD United has also been really intentional there. Importantly, more than half of respondents said that they would eventually like technical assistance with dissemination, and we can see the breakdown right here. 82% total said yes or not yet, but they're looking for that material. And so to that point, at FASD United, we provide help with things like fact sheets based on community need and information. I'm going to have my team members put some links in the chat here for things that you can visit, but these are downloadable, shareable, printable, quick resources that are all cited on different topics like substance use, education, child welfare. So we do provide help with those. Research findings and opportunities. On our website, we have a current research opportunities where people will reach out, recruiting for research. And we also have an available spot where if you find really cool research that you want the community to see, you can submit that to be a part of our weekly roundup, which Andy will touch on a little later. We also do state-by-state information and resources like our resource directory and our state data sheets, where you can click on the state you live in and find out what sorts of resources are available for you in your state, as opposed to a more federal national level. We also do printable items for conferences, or if you're at a table, we do postcards, infographics, that sort of thing. And if you're ever looking for something specific that we don't have available on our website, please reach out to us and we can partner with you on creating that. And that can be something that you utilize. We also do social media graphic templates specifically for FASD Awareness Month in September. But we're looking to expand that into other important months like Alcohol Awareness Month, Disability Awareness Month, those sorts of things. And then importantly, we need to balance the quantitative data with qualitative data. And so we asked this question of how does your organization incorporate and prioritize people with living experience into materials, resources, and dissemination? So these were some of the responses that we got. And I won't read them all, but feel free to. But according to the World Economic Forum, and they did this in alongside the American Association of People with Disabilities, they found that companies that include disability were twice as likely to have higher shareholder returns than their peers, higher revenue and greater economic profit margins, as well as twice the net income of their industry peers. And this was done between 2015 and 2018. And while this research was done on companies and not nonprofit organizations or government agencies, these findings are really still relevant to the average consumer's mindset and perspectives, and also emphasizes just best practices for organizing bodies, being inclusive, especially ADA compliance, disability compliant. And so we really just wanted to emphasize that having people living with the disability, living with FASD is really, really important to a well-rounded organization. And so now I'm going to turn it over to my team to kind of discuss a little bit more on the different types of media channels that we utilize and that are important to utilize when discussing FASD communications.
Thank you so much, Cassidy. Okay, so let's look into how you can best use these media channels. I especially like focusing on where your audience is on every single one of these platforms for every format. So let's begin. The majority of our FASD family belongs on Facebook, and here is where a lot of our group pages are and where I think you can best form your own community online. This is usually a family-orientated graphic where most FASD-informed parents/individuals are being involved on a personal or community-involved level. Moreover, on Facebook, it allows for us to create longer narratives and connect to our own community and share more of this storytelling. It's also easy to make quote-unquote friends, if you will, to speak and be next to and find your community. Next, we have Instagram. This is a farther-reaching media channel in the new wave. It seems that the youth of today are really into Instagram and how it offers a visual-centered approach. This is great for communicating about FASD because it allows for infographics such as our fact sheets that Cassidy was already talking about. Can be shared at all ages and at all levels, basically. And what you really need to know about this platform is that it's a visual storytelling, or that the hallmark of the entire platform is really rooted in visual storytelling. When looking to LinkedIn, this is going to be our professional zone, if you will. Think of this as a mega networking party. It's a party the whole time you're there. LinkedIn houses many government sources that are shared. This is where professionals rally and government officials network on this platform. LinkedIn really allows for us to reach out further professionally, which is why we're all here right now. Next, we have Blue Sky/Threads. So if you don't know, Blue Sky is a new social media platform that has just emerged recently in the past few months. This is basically to be taking over X, or formerly known as Twitter. Blue Sky seems to be headed for that spot of the former, and started off with a lot of academics and professionals who want clear-cut news and statistics that are relevant. Both revolve around short narratives, both Blue Sky and Threads, and images are highly encouraged and looked into. This can be good for community, especially if you are using the tools that we will get into in a few slides.
All right, thanks so much, Sophie. So email newsletters or e-newsletters, those are also a great tool for connecting the community and building engagement. And so we have a long-running news source for the FASD field and community that's called the Weekly Roundup. And we get a lot of value out of this, which really applies to any main e-newsletter of an organization. So e-newsletters, it's kind of an old-fashioned, old school technology maybe at this point, but definitely has certain advantages that we found. So there's a consistency to it in terms of how it comes out at a regular time, and readers can really kind of plan their schedule around it. And we found a real depth to the coverage, that the content is carefully curated and given kind of the limited length each week, and not everything that comes out can be included. So what is included tends to really reflect a real high quality of top content. And over time, that's built up a sense of trust and a strong reputation that's been helpful for the organization and the field. And newsletters, it's a great way to build connectivity and collaboration. And so people can stay informed each week. It kind of unites the community. And since it does go out at the same time, and most people see it at around the same time, it's probably the closest that the FASD field maybe has to like a water cooler conversation, where people are talking about the same topic. And it functions also as a specific target for the community to aim towards. And it's kind of a hub for major releases of new products, new campaigns from different organizations and advocates. And over time, I've heard a lot of feedback that people tend to feel really excited when they're, featured in the weekly roundup in our case, or a project that they've worked on is featured in it. And so it kind of builds a sense of excitement and morale that is great. And on a practical level, it's really easily shareable. Emails, could just be forwarded along to people really easily. And it doesn't just do one thing. So how, each post that's in the e-newsletter is a piece of content that can be shared across social media. And there's a built-in archive to it. So, on our website, we have an archive of past editions of the newsletter, and you can look back on the history of our communication, which is great. It also can be repurposed into different things. So there's so much content that it's used as an archive of materials. We've used it as for example, as a database of research. Each week, there's a lot of research that goes into it, so it can kind of be repurposed in that way, which is great. I'd say moving on to YouTube. So YouTube is really great for longer, in-depth video content, particularly sharing personal stories of self-advocates speaking in their own words, because the length is not limited like some of the other social media platforms. The videos don't need to be cut to fit a particular length. So people can really kind of speak in an authentic voice, which is great and really exemplifies the kind of emotional appeal of these stories. And for example, we've been using YouTube to house our Glimpses of FASD series. So that's basically a video shorts series featuring individuals with FASD sharing their own stories in their own words. It started in the last year, and that's great. People can check that out on our YouTube channel. And YouTube has a real wide reach. It's universally accessible, definitely easy to share in other platforms. And again, content can be repurposed. It can be, webinars, presentations can be put onto YouTube to kind of broaden the audience. So it's great for expanding engagement of programs. And for example, how we host recent calls and meetings, and people that maybe weren't initially involved can watch those and be inspired to hopefully join the next call or the next meeting as well. So moving on to X or Twitter, and as we heard from Sophie, the audience is changing with Blue Sky and Threads, and other services are cropping up. And as social media does get more fragmented, but we found that X or Twitter definitely still reaches a wide group of people. There's a lot of particularly institutional accounts and organizations, government accounts and other organizations that are there to collaborate with, to be part of campaigns. And so it's definitely, we found it to be important to maintain a presence there while also utilizing these newer spaces as well, in terms of just maximizing the different audiences that we're reaching.
And then, as I was saying, we would get back to the website. But the website for an organization is really kind of your front-facing embodiment of who you are, what you represent, your mission, your vision. And so it's really important to have a website that represents what you stand for and supports your cause. And so you can be very intentional. You can house so many different things on there, similar to an e-newsletter, but it's more so you can share it. You can link things, you can include different types of media sources on there. And so we really want to emphasize continually building out the website. And that's something that our organization has prioritized this last year as well and into this year. And then TikTok. We know that TikTok is rapidly evolving and incredibly popular, but it is important to be very intentional with this platform. Because we really want to approach content in a non-stigmatizing way that gives a voice to people living with FASD. Because when you go on TikTok, You're not looking for an infographic. You're not looking for those prevalent statistics. You're looking for a face. You're looking to see someone that you trust, that you relate to, and that you want to hear talk and explain something, or that is living with the disability. So we really want to provide accurate, people-centered content, which is why our organization personally has kind of been putting that on the back burner, just to make sure that we're super intentional with how we enter that platform in a people-centered way. But each of these platforms, importantly, has hosted one of our newest and largest campaigns called Seat at the Table. And this has been a vital piece of our communications and media this last year. I keep forgetting it's 2025. But each of these platforms, you can tailor your message and your campaign to the platform. So if it's on LinkedIn, approaching it in the professional manner. If it's on the e-newsletter, expanding a little bit into the different types of ways you can get involved. But it's just been really interesting to see this campaign grow on each of these platforms, while also making it accessible and appealing on each of these things, so that it's not too separate and siloed. But we'll get into the seat at the table a little more throughout this presentation. But we just wanted to emphasize that you can have a really large campaign housed on each of these independent channels.
Thank you, Cassidy. So now this leads us into our next portion, which is what should we communicate? When talking about what FASD means, I think that it's important to talk about how diagnosis is not definition, and emphasize the voices of people living with FASD, and that FASD is a spectrum and should be included when talking about neurodiversity. Further, there has been an important shift to strength-based research related to positive psychology, which highlights that by focusing on positive attributes and fostering well-being, companies and organizations can enhance customer relationships and brand loyalty. When considering best language to support your communication of FASD, please feel free to reference our amazing language and stigma guide, which I will put in the chat right now. This is a guide that is just so helpful for understanding everything that there is to know about even just basics. Even if you are FASD informed, this is really a guide for everyone. So thank you for that. Next, we have our calls to actions. This serves as a helpful tool for the FASD community to work towards our common mission. And having CTAs lets your audience know what to do when being informed on the topic.
Thanks so much, Sophie. So yeah, personal stories is a great thing to communicate, to show this is really about real people, that FASD is not just a label. And so real stories, real people, it has a strong emotional appeal, and we found it to make a really strong impact in the community. So especially featuring self-advocates, and especially diverse voices. So when it comes to FASD, kind of capturing stories across the full spectrum of experience, as well as diversity of background, and people coming from different places and across the lifespan as well, particularly adults whose stories are traditionally not told as frequently. So, when we tell people's personal stories, we really try to approach things from a strengths-based lens. And we know that in this community, there's a lot of support needs that are not met. And it's important to have the reality and the challenge out there, but also important to show individual strengths and contributions that we don't often see depicted in media enough. So in terms of finding people, finding people whose stories to share. So one question is kind of who are we connected with, who's showing up at our events, who's kind of tied into our network is a great way to start. And then people who may have shared their story before, in terms of people may have shared their story on a podcast or some other platform. And so it's great to get those people involved as well, if possible. And then just kind of reaching out within the community. It's about building trust, and we always try to involve, excuse me, try to involve people in the process. Um, so whether it's a video or an article, we always share a draft in advance so that people know that they can give feedback, that their feedback is valued. Excuse me. So just fighting off a bit of a cough. So so We also, are asking people in our community to, share content like photos, that, any way that we can get people involved. So showing real people really helps with the goal of countering stigma, which kind of brings us to the next. All right. So countering stigma, stories do this, but also there's other things as well. So as in terms of how we use language, I found it definitely be a top priority to really err on the side of sensitivity to any possible stigma. And sometimes it can be a little bit more subtle. And sometimes it's easy to spot this. Sometimes things can be well-meaning, but using maybe outdated terminology. So again, this is where the language and stigma guide is great. It goes into a lot of detail about kind of what sort of language and terminology to use and why not. So again, thanks Sophie for putting that link in the chat. And that is also available on our homepage to view, to share. You can see lots of examples. For example, things like person first language and using language that's empowering, not blaming. And not reducing people to their disability, having this kind of, FASD, inclusive, not definition, um, campaign is really important and really important to, be inclusive, empowering, involving people throughout the process as well. So then another thing we want to do using communications is using communications to feature programs. So by featuring our programs, I'd say um, featuring programs is really a great way of answering the question, now what? So, now we know that FASD is important and the need is really great. What can we actually do about it? And the answer often comes from looking towards our program. So, considering the audience who's kind of coming to us. So, for people that are coming for direct help, like families, it's great to feature programs. In our case, we have the Family Navigator that offers peer support with no barrier, that's free and confidential, and also a resource directory. You probably have something similar programs as well. That's great to, just have communications content about. And then there's people that come to us that want to get involved and advocate and make a difference. So there, our programs like the affiliate network and other specific programs really tie into that well. So by highlighting our programs through communications, that really does more than one thing. It's a way of growing content. Um, so uh, of additional content to communicate about in terms of articles and things like that and features. And it also serves the needs of the programs by getting the word out, inspiring people to get involved. And also pairing communications with our programs. It's a great way to build connections between team members and just kind of strengthen the organization overall.
All righty, next on to importance of diagnosis and intervention. The importance of diagnosis and intervention are key to unlocking the potential of individuals with FASD, enabling them to lead healthier, more independent and fulfilling lives. This is why we need to echo the sentiment of universal screening. Early identification not only provides immediate benefits in terms of access to appropriate services, but also has long-term positive effects on mental health, education, and social functioning. Recognizing FASD and intervening early provides individuals with the best possible foundation for success. And on to the next, talking about success, FASD community and making a difference. So when talking about making a difference, right now we're talking about the means of expanding the FASD community, building goodwill, showcasing that we are doing the work, and building morale. We need to focus on communicating about the FASD community and allowing other people in. I think this is what is really important right now with our new era is we have our own bubble, but we need to invite the outside in so that we can grow and even have an even bigger impact. What we're doing right now, communication wise, is that we're doing well in our bubble, but like I said, we need people from the outside to be able to see it. We want it to be all encompassing and inviting the outside in, and you can make a difference in multiple ways, even if you're not 100% FASD informed. Going back to our grassroots movement lens and starting with the people in your life and community.
Thanks, Sophie. So yeah, new information every week, every day. I'd say there's some piece of new information related to our issue. So important to have clear standards on what to include and what to feature and maybe what to leave out. And we know that our partner NIAAA is really familiar with research and sourcing, double checking sources and citations and that sort of thing. But also just really wanting to emphasize the importance of considering stigma. Certain things may be attention grabbing or kind of pushing it to get attention. And that sometimes a red flag may not be the best thing to include in terms of promoting through social media and our other communications platforms. So wanting to, adhere to a certain set of principles, like just kind of keep it positive and strength-based when possible and look for news, especially about people that are in the FASD community that are doing great work that maybe are getting an award or just a profile of that person that goes into detail. And we know the reality is often not always positive. But just wanting to convey that sense of hope and that sort of, uplifting or positive sort of hopeful kind of message to counter a lot of the negativity that is out there and how these strength-based stories are not often depicted enough kind of in the media. So we know that also sometimes stories that we've encountered can be on an important topic, but maybe unintentionally stigmatizing, sometimes through the language that's used or the headline, or if it's kind of dwelling on a problem or something negative. So that's just something to consider. I'd say other great pieces of information, any kind of actionable things that we can take action on, and resources, new products, and then new research, particularly research that is directly useful to families. So, for example, studies on new interventions or education resources that families and others can really put to use is really valuable as well.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, next, let's talk about well-rounded communications. And when we're talking about this, let's first start off with the knowing. So what we should know first is clarity and consistency. One of the hallmarks of effective communication is clarity. Whether in writing, visuals, or via speech, the message should be easy to understand, especially when dealing with a disability audience. Having concise messaging and keeping your message focused and to the point is really important as well. Having brevity is more impactful, especially in the digital communication where attention spans are shorter. And then consistency across all communication channels builds trust and reinforces your message. This includes consistency in your tone, style, branding, and your messaging overall. Repetition is also another hallmark of this. Repetition is key for your messages, it's like a call to action or of your core values across different platforms and formats, which increases your retention and understanding, which is why when we talk about the 1 in 20, you're going to remember that.
All right. Thanks so much, Sophie. So really important, to know your audience and to use audience-centric messaging. So we look at data about who's coming to us in terms of, people that are how they're connected to the FASD issues, families, professionals, that sort of thing. And there's a lot of great data with tools that are available through social network tools and things like that in terms of people's ages, where they're coming from, that sort of thing. And understanding your audience is really key to effective communication so that we can tailor messages and tone and the delivery method based on the audience's needs and preferences and behaviors. So another part of also knowing your audience is kind of knowing your partners and leveraging partnerships, particularly, NIAAA being a great partner and others, and just being able to amplify each other's messages and kind of cross promote what our partners are doing. And then getting the latest news out there and just ensuring that content and news is relevant, is accurate and positive and timely, and just staying updated on new developments in the field and staying in touch with partners and advocates. We try to regularly evaluate and update our language and tone that we're using and checking the latest research and news and events. And sometimes, if you're not seeing a lot of news, for example, there's tools like using national health observances and occasions for new content. So, for example, things like National Parents Day and Disability Pride Month are great opportunities to develop, particular content for a blog post or video or social media campaign, that sort of thing. And then just watching trends in terms of how people want to be communicated with and being proactive.
Next on to feel. So first, let's talk about emotional appeal. Humans are naturally drawn to stories, believe it or not. Stanford research shows that people are 20 22 times more likely to remember a story that encompasses positive messaging over just facts alone. This is why well-rounded communication often includes elements of storytelling, particularly when trying to engage, persuade, or inspire action. Humans process visual, so talking about visual storytelling next. Humans process visuals faster than text, which is why we have multiple levels and different channels, as we talked about before. Which is why the means and the images that we use are so important, because what we put out as images help define the FASD movement. Multimedia, especially pictures or using real life people, such as images, infographics, videos, and animations, can significantly enhance the effectiveness of your communication. And it's an important tool to counter stigma as well. Using infographics, charts, and videos to break down complex information in a digestible format is going to be best for well-rounded communications, and a well-designed infographic about the statistics of FASD or a video interview with a healthcare provider can communicate more than just a page of text. Next, we have our authentic voice. Transparency and authenticity is vital for trust, and trust is central to having effective communication. Being transparent and authentic fosters trust with your audience, and having honesty to share both the challenges and successes is important, but a balance is imperative. Similarly to balancing prevention and intervention messaging, if FASD United is working on a new initiative, it's important to share both the progress and the hurdles that you're also facing. An authentic voice makes the message feel more genuine and relatable, which can help foster stronger connections between you and your audience. Having empathy, effective communication taps into emotions like empathy, hope, and concern. When talking about FASD, stories of real families or individuals help put a human face to the cause, making the issue more relatable. Personalification, tailoring the message so that it resonates with the emotions, values, and experiences of your audience is important. A message about FASD may resonate differently with parents versus healthcare professionals, so personalize your approach accordingly. And Cass, if you could just jump in real quick about this.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in from the living experience perspective because we've said a lot about, strengths-based, positive, that sort of thing. And I just wanted to say, while research does support that positive stories and those sorts of things are really helpful for when you're kind of mentioning it to people and you're doing research and collecting these things and building out the movement, we know that that's not always the reality. Growing up in a household with someone diagnosed with FASD who we didn't actually know had FASD for years because we adopted him as a baby and he got every diagnosis under the sun before he got FASD. It's imperative to not just, think, well, if we just, say their strengths and do all of this, that it's going to be perfect and the movement will move forward. It's really important, like Sophie and Andy have emphasized, to balance those things because we know that this disability does come with a lot of hardships and a lot of realities that caregivers, siblings, people in the community do struggle with and do need to voice in order to secure those supports. But our emphasis with communications, specifically on FASD, is that the strengths-based lens can really help secure support from outside community members. It's really important to kind of share amongst our community the realities and the struggles of what's happening. But in order to secure, things like funding, supports, interventions, we do need to have that balance of strengths-based and successes with the realities, the challenges, and the hardships. So we just wanted to acknowledge that we know that this isn't just sunshine and rainbows. Trust me, I know. But just emphasizing that there is a real strength in the positivity and the emotional appeal.
Yeah, all right. Thanks so much, Cassidy. Thanks for that perspective. That was really, really well said. It's definitely, yeah, about balance, I think, like Cassidy was saying. And just to kind of wrap up this slide about well-rounded communications, just in terms of things we can do, just a call to action. Well-rounded communication strategy definitely, needs to include a clear call to action to answer the question, now what? And what do you want your audience to do after receiving your message? So actionable requests are great in terms of or encouraging the audience to, take tangible steps. So whether that is donating or sharing a particular message on a particular social media platform or attending an event, registering to attend an event, maybe signing a petition, something that is concrete is great. And then having a sense of urgency and relevance. So making the call to action time sensitive if necessary. So there's things like, saying donate by the end of the month to fund, this sort of critical research, or making it relevant to a current event or issue, tying into a health observance, for example. And then just really wanting to, join the conversation when the conversations are out there happening. So responding to maybe hot topics or items in the news and kind of following emerging topics while also being deliberate and methodical in messaging. So one thing is it's really important to kind of get the whole team on the same page and consider how communicating internally as a team can kind of make the external communications more effective. So one thing that we found helpful is to plan for some news in advance, maybe certain things, certain research that is kind of coming down the pike that hasn't kind of really gotten a lot of attention yet. We can be proactive with writing some potential responses in advance to kind of keep in the bank for when something may take off in the media and get a lot of attention. And also, so that we do it in advance, it's a way of getting everyone on the same page. And then just again, sharing those tangible tools. So featuring resources whenever possible. For example, we have some tools developed by our family navigators to give to teachers and other things like grab and grow brochures, and also sometimes helpful to just kind of dig into the archives for materials that may still be useful. So taking a lot of those principles that we talked about, that Sophie talked about, from the feel category in terms of emotional appeal, visual storytelling, authentic voice, and just taking all of that and putting it to use in a direct way.
Alrighty, let's buckle in. What can you take away from today? First of all, the power of storytelling. People remember stories and not just facts, as we stated before. FASD United emphasizes how sharing real personal stories of those affected by FASD can have a significant emotional impact and foster empathy. And the biggest takeaway from this is that even without advanced communication tools, using personal narratives in newsletters, presentations, and meetings can be super helpful for your message and for your message to be even more relatable and even more powerful. Next, the importance of digital presence without it being overwhelming. Why does this matter? You don't need to be a social media expert to benefit from having an online presence. I know that I may be your social media expert, but I can very genuinely and honestly tell you that you don't have to be an expert just by having a presence online. A website or an email newsletter can be just as effective as social media campaigns when managed simply and efficiently. A takeaway is start small. If you haven't already, create a simple online presence like a website or a regular email to keep your audience informed and engaged, and it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. Next, simplifying your message. Why does this matter? It's clear, straightforward communication is essential. 1 in 20, that is a kid in every classroom. It simplifies it and contextualizes it. How many times have you heard this? This is just a perfect example of that. A takeaway from this is that by simplifying your message, by focusing on key facts that are easy to understand, they are going to be more obtainable and easy to still recall. Next, engaging your community. Why does this matter? Engaged communities can be the most powerful advocates, as all of you that are here right now can tell and be a great supporter of that. Whether through in-person events, partnerships, or local outreach, the people who believe in your cause can amplify your message tenfold, truly. And all of you are just a beautiful example of that. Another takeaway from this is focusing on building relationships, whether online or offline. Personal connection goes a long way in spreading awareness and support, engaging your community. One of the biggest needs heard is to be more awareness and getting the message out of just outside of our FASD bubble means talking about it and bringing everything back, kind of echoing back to what Cassidy was just saying. Next and lastly is creating a consistent brand. Why does this matter? In the digital age, consistency across all platforms, whether website, newsletter, or social media, strengthens an organization's identity. The takeaway from this is even if your organization doesn't engage on social media, having a consistent message, look, and tone across all your materials really helps build trust and recognition. And having a consistent brand can just really help you further your cause all the way through. let's see. So what do we mean by new era? The new era for FASD United Communications and Media is all about evolution, adapting to the digital age, fostering inclusivity, and scaling our efforts to create a world where FASD is understood and supported everywhere. FASD United will lead with fresh, forward-thinking approaches that use new technologies to advance advocacy and education, and we will engage more people from individuals affected by FASD to large organizations with more relevant, personalized, and compelling messaging. Our communications will drive real-world change from more funding for research to broader awareness of FASD's impact on individuals and families.
So by the new era, I know I keep forgetting that we're in 2025, but this slide just serves as a reminder. We really want to emphasize increased impact in bringing more people to the table that may not know the table exists or don't know what seat they have, which I'm sure you guys have heard us talk about the table metaphor and the seat metaphor. But if you haven't, feel free to reach out because we would love to explain it. But just having this increased impact, delivering tangible benefits, um, and trying to recruit new types of people, new partners joining this cause that may not know that they have a role in it. And that leads into our expanded inclusion. We want more voices. We want to diversify the voices that we have. We want to diversify the range of experiences that we see. And this can just lead to an overall reduction of stigma, which is really important for FASD United. As well as bringing self-advocates into the power, into the community, and really just empowering the community and this grassroots movement to expand and really just build a bigger table.
All right, thanks so much. I just wanted just to very briefly highlight a few of the resources available from NIAAA and from FASD United, and call out in particular the Alcohol Treatment Navigator from NIAAA, where you can find quality in-person and online support. And NIAAA has these great short takes video series, including some specific to FASD and women and alcohol, and Rethinking Drinking, that has a guide to alcohol in your health and guidelines, tools to make a change. And then from FASD United, just wanted to call out in particular again our language and stigma guide that is available now on our homepage, and the link that's in the chat. And so click to, view that. Please download, view, share it widely. We're really proud of this new resource that just goes into a lot of in-depth examples of really kind of the nuance of language around FASD and prenatal alcohol exposure and all of that. Then also just calling out our amazing family navigators. Those are all parents and caregivers themselves, and it's all about offering peer support, again, with no barrier, that's free and confidential and FASD informed. So that's also an amazing resource.
And finally, we just wanted to say thank you all for being here. Please feel free to reach out to us. We've included our address, our website, our phone number, our emails. And if you want to reach out to one of us personally, please feel free to reach out to that email, or we can just provide our emails in the chat too. But we've saved you a seat. You are always welcome at our table. And we just want to say thank you all for being here and learning more about FASD communications. So with that, I just wanted to open the floor up, see if anyone had any questions or wanted to comment on anything. And if not, please enjoy your Friday. You are not required to stay and discuss with us, but thank you again. Hi, Marilyn. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just posted something online on the chat because to me, what's getting a lot of publicity right now is the cause of autism,
Mm.
and they don't know the cause. We do know the cause. I think that's such a great, timely message to get the word out. And I think I'd love to see FASD United do something with that. This is a great opportunity. We do know the cause, and what are people going to do about it? Because once they find the cause of autism, hopefully that will happen. I tell you, things are going to change. Well, we already know it. So it's just a good talking point, I think, that I'd love to see go out there. And I mean to the world, to the US. and maybe get some coverage on that, because right now there's so much coverage on autism. And
And
there's also coverage on talking about alcohol being a cause of cancer. There's one article I saw that mentioned FASD in there, but not much. That's another one, another thing that you could build on, I believe.
mm, and well, first, I want to touch on the autism point because I think you're so right that we need to kind of work in tandem in partnership with the autism movement because they've gained a lot of traction over the last years. And I remember in speaking with Dr. Eric Flake for an interview that we had done because he runs an autism center as well as trying to open up an FASD center for parents and caregivers, families in the military system nationally, which kudos to him for real. But I remember us talking and him saying his goal, and he wants our goal as well, to really just be the joining of these movements because we have so much to learn from one another and so much that can be done to help propel the FASD movement forward. Because as we know, FASD is more common, but we have much less supports, a more stigma, and it's just kind of a different barrier that we're facing than the autism movement in a sense. Not to compare at all, because like I said, that's not the goal here. We really want to work in tandem. So I think that's a really excellent point. And then I would also encourage you, Marilyn, with that article that you were just mentioning, please submit that to our weekly roundup. I would love to read it. I know I haven't read it yet. Andy, I'm not sure if you have. But we would love to get that included on the weekly roundup because that seems very important. So thank you for your comments.
Not sure which article you mean. You mean about cancer?
Yeah, the one that you were just discussing about alcohol and cancer, I would be very interested to read that.
Well, it's all over the place, articles
Yeah.
about that, because the Surgeon General
Yes, they.
record, but you know what? There's
Yeah.
one article I read that it had a very like one line,
Mm.
because it's mentioning about
Yes.
alcohol has the message of don't drink when you're
Yeah.
pregnant, and it was just barely mentioned, but it's another one you could build on because
Yes.
it's
That's
out
a
there.
That's a good point. We're in the process now of putting out a statement about the research on the Surgeon General's advisory about the link of alcohol and cancer. So in the process of putting out a statement that'll probably be out early next week, and just kind of making the point of being encouraged in terms of the continuing to look at the alcohol and public health and making the point of staying vigilant about the effects of PAE and the importance of that, and kind of tying it into how working collectively, that addressing the public health impact of alcohol is like a team effort, and addressing the harms of prenatal alcohol exposure helps kind of also tie into alcohol's other harms as well, how it can kind of work together holistically. And there being, a need for like a lot more awareness campaign about, alcohol and public health in general that could involve, these different issues. So yes, that's a really good example of the kind of, breaking news piece that comes out in the field that, yeah, that we want to be part of the conversation. So. Yes. And I was wondering, Tom, if you wanted to maybe speak to some. I noticed that you responded to some of the additional comments that we got during the chat, or if there were any, or if some of the people that made any of those comments would like to add anything to that.
Thank you, Andy, and to you, Cassidy and Sophie. A great presentation. Thank you very much. Well, Kathy Hoteling, who I think made a number of the comments, she has stepped away. But if Sid Gardner is there, I do want to, as I mentioned in the chat, thank you, Sid, and welcome you to the FASD United policy team. As I said, your voice and your ideas will be very important there. And also pointed out, and I see that. Andy, you and I, along with one of our fellow co-authors, Elizabeth Dang, is on the call here, and I inserted a paper earlier in the chat about the importance of screening and brief intervention. So that was a topic that both Kathy and Sid had mentioned. So I urge everyone to take a look at that as well.
I don't want to interrupt anyone, but I do want to say to Sid's comment, because I am just now reading through the chat, really the emphasis on tracking progress with state and local scorecards and having that history of where are we improving, where are we regressing, I think is something that we're focused on this year specifically, as we just released our state data sheets, and those go through what is needing more attention, where states may be struggling or not addressing certain things, and where they are. And I think that that's a priority that we're doing every year to kind of revamp and go through. And so I think that that will be built in to our state data sheets. And so I think that that's a great point, that we need more resources like that. But I don't know if I don't want to misunderstand Sid's point there, but I did want to address that because I think it's something that we're trying to be purposeful with. Thank you, Rosa. We've definitely talked about revamping that campaign, or just repurposing it in a more modern and fresh way. And so that's something that we have discussed about bringing back. Marilyn, I saw maybe you had another comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that just yesterday we were tasked in our group, a couple people from the Colorado FASD awareness work group. The Colorado now has a behavioral health administration, and we're in touch with people that are doing training, and they need to justify an FASD class. So we're reviewing some of the material they've come up with, but they're also saying, please tell us why we can justify having this course in there for mostly for providers in the behavioral health area. So that's what we need. I think all the states need. We need something to justify data, why it is needed, why we need to teach people about about FASD in Colorado.
I would say something to that is the FASD and special education survey that we have been doing last year. That infographic is more of a national level than a state level, but I think a lot of the materials on that infographic and from that survey can be used in educational settings.
Oh, no, this is to educate providers. So if somebody wants to be a provider with the Behavioral Health Administration, they have courses they're going to give them, or maybe require them to take. Why should FASD be included? Well, because most people are not diagnosed, because how many people are being born that aren't being diagnosed? I know there used to be one that had to do with the FASD Respect Act with a lot of data for the state. Just saying that we could really use that. A lot of us are working at the state level. So anything you can provide at the state level, I think is really, I know for us, is really needed. Thanks. And this was great, by the way. Thanks.
Your comments. That's really important, the state level resources. Sorry, I think I misunderstood. Originally, I thought educational systems, but for providers at the state level, I'm just writing that down so that we can potentially follow up with you there. Okay. Thank you, Marilyn.
Yeah, thank you.
Student special education. Oh, thank you, Sophie, for putting that link in there.
Gotcha.
I know that we are past time a little bit, so I just wanted to, if you want to stay and chat with us, you are more than welcome. But if not, thank you so much for attending, everyone. We really appreciate you, and feel free to reach out.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
And enjoy your weekend. I hope it's not snowy wherever you are.